Almost the end of July. It has gone fast, for sure. Few of us get out of childhood unscathed. I mean, unscathed from some sort of awful incident or incidences. And if we view the world through whatever that wound was, we are blind to what is. My early education was not a pleasant experience, and I've talked about it here before. I went to Catholic school, and at that time, shaming was a part of the experience. And getting something wrong, or not understanding something the way you were supposed to understand it, opened you up to ridicule, or even worse, being made an example of. So, when I first met my wife, Jane, stay with me here, okay? It'll all tie together. When I first met my wife, Jane, we felt crazy in love. She invited me to accompany her to a dance flurry. That's contra dancing, something I knew nothing about. She asked me to accompany her. And I'd never done any such thing, but being crazy in love, you say yes to a lot of things. And I wanted to go with her and give it a try. Now, I'm a musician, but had never been much of a dancer. I was the guy playing the music that people were dancing to, so I didn't have to worry about it. But being crazy in love and listening to Jane's assurances that there would be instruction there that would help me to learn the dances. So I went along. And when we pulled into the place, by the way, this was on the other side of the state, because at that time she was living over on the other side of this state. When we pull in, I was amazed to see there was like hundreds of people milling about. So we went into the auditorium for the lessons. And when the music started, I tried to follow the instructions that the guy on the stage was giving us. But my mind kept freezing. It just kept freezing up. I couldn't follow the instructions, and as the people were moving, I was just falling further and further behind. I felt myself getting really angry. And before I even realized what I was doing, there was no thought in this, I basically turned around and I walked out of the place. And there's my wife, and all she sees is the back of my head going out the door. So she saw she was alone on the dance floor. She saw that I went out, and she immediately followed me to see if I was okay. No, I wasn't okay. But Jane looked at me with such love, and maybe a bit of sympathy, but it was the love that I saw. And I felt my anxiety, and I was anxious. I felt my anxiety and the anger quickly dissipating, as she assured me I had not done anything wrong out there, and that everyone feels clumsy at first. Until this interruption, I was being blinded. I was not in reality as it was, which was people basically gathered together and enjoying themselves and trying to help one another. I was in reality as I was, fearful, afraid of doing something wrong, afraid of being made fun of or looking stupid. And thanks to that, I was miserable. I was not having a good time, and I was not having any more of it, and I was out the door. But love saved me. Love's opposite is not hate, it's fear. Hate is a byproduct of fear. Just think about that. Hate is a byproduct of fear. Why do people hate? I mean, if you go past the obvious reasons, such as wrongs that are done or injustices or different politics or whatever you can come up with, at some point you will come to fear. You will. Fear of loss, as in control or power or prestige, Fear of lack, for not having enough. Fear that in some way I may not be good enough, or even worse, fear that I may actually not be as good as I think I am. One of my things that I often repeat, like I say, I repeat a lot of things, is we love to hate in the world what we hate to love in ourselves. And I wish I knew who said that originally, because I would give them credit for it every time, because I think it's brilliant. We love to hate in ourselves what we hate to love in the world. I just did it backwards, but I do that too sometimes. So now substitute fear for hate. Jesus tells us very clearly, love your enemies. Lao Tzu, who was the author of the Tao, wrote, love the world as your own self. And the Buddha said, hatred does not cease by hatred at any time. Hatred ceases by love. This is an eternal rule. An eternal rule. Rule as in law, like gravity. What you put out comes back to you. I guess the idea of karma, a lot of people talk about, but it's called a lot of different things. So the other night, the news comes on, and I find myself talking to the TV. And by the way, these are not nice or kind words I'm saying. But who is annoyed or tense or angry? Who is it? It's me. What is being accomplished when I'm doing that? Very little, other than an amplification of the fear, disguised as anger, because that's what happens. Because anger feels a lot more powerful than fear. But you look underneath anger and you're going to find fear. So I'm in the room by myself. I'm pissed off. And I'm having this conversation with this person. I'm thinking to myself, these people are clueless. And what's happening? What's being amplified? This has an effect. And it does affect, and even infect, the world, at least the world at that moment, in that room, in my heart. And that's my perception of the world. And now perhaps in the grand scheme of things, that seems really minuscule because it's just one guy in a room with this TV set. But when you begin multiplying this by thousands and probably millions of other people doing something similar, what do you got? You got a lot of pissed off people. But if I am able, and here's the key, if I am able and willing to see what's happening as I start to engage in this, I can choose to remind myself of what I do know, even though I don't necessarily feel it in that moment, because in that moment I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling love. But I know that Jesus is right. I know that the Buddha is right. I know that Lao Tzu is right, and that all the other wisdom teachers who say this over and over again, that they're right. They're not blowing smoke. They're telling me something that's really vitally important. Love is the answer. So I can turn off the TV. I can turn my focus away from the chaos and the disagreement, and I can offer blessings and healing and peace to these people I so strongly disagree with. I can do that. It's not easy, but I can do it. Do they know this? Probably not. No, they don't know it. Does that matter that they don't know it? No, not at all. They don't have to know it. Why? Because by doing this, something has shifted in me. I'm better. And in my little corner of the world, I take this betterness. Instead of bitterness, I take this betterness, and I take that with me as I go out into the world and interact with people at the store or on the road or wherever I am. And those people who then interact with other people take a little bit of that too. And so on and so on and so on. And eventually, it connects in some form or way totally beyond my ability to imagine or know. And change occurs. It does. You know, we hear this said a lot. I've said it here a lot because, like I said, I repeat myself. We are all connected in ways that we do not understand, and we can't understand. And we're not, I guess, supposed to understand. I don't know. When I find out, I'll let you know. But this is what is at the heart of this spiritual teaching and why every tradition speaks of it. And it's the answer to the troubles, the suffering, and the dilemmas that we continue to perpetuate when we fail to practice it. I have a dear friend who died just a couple of weeks ago, a wonderful woman who was just shy of 90 and had a challenging life, but she would always say to me, "We are all wounded birds." Financial success, status, accomplishments, titles, roles, none of these relieves or exempts anyone. And the simple truth is, everyone struggles with something. I've never met a human being that's not wrestling with something. Maybe that's the true common ground that we all stand on as human beings. Pain is a part of life, and suffering does happen to everybody at some point. It just does. It's said that where the wound is where the light can enter us. It's in the broken places where the healing begins. I remember when I first heard that, I didn't particularly like it. It's in the recognition of our own woundedness, our own imperfections and the flaws, that the healing begins and transformation can start. Where we can face the hurt and the darkness in ourselves, we will no longer project it out into the world and onto them or others. It's said that the pain that we do not transmute, change into something else, we will transmit. I don't know whether you've noticed, there's a lot being transmitted. Our task as human beings is to transmute our pain into something that can be of benefit to others. And in order to do this, we must become willing to love what has been unlovable in our own self. But here's the thing, we can't, in doing this, we can't get stuck in self-absorption because that ultimately takes you in the wrong direction. Because when you really come to realize what I'm talking about here, it's not about you, it's not about me. It's about we, it's about us, it's about something other than just that little localized expression of this great infinite organizing intelligence that's Richard or Holly or any one of you. It's something more than that. And the realization of that is the path to becoming fully human. Because then I can see in you the suffering I can see in myself. and vice versa. We can see it in each other. We recognize it. It doesn't have to be the same source of pain, but suffering is suffering. Anyone that's been in pain knows that. We're all here to do this, to become fully human. To be fully human requires full engagement of body and spirit. And it's no easy thing to do, and it's not guaranteed you're going to succeed. Not everyone makes it, because fear blocks the way. Fear will always block the way. Fear always keeps a person disconnected from their heart. And without the heart, there can be no life. Coming fully into one's own heart can be terrifying because it feels too vulnerable. It just feels too vulnerable. As if you're opening yourself up to something you cannot control, something bigger than you are. This is true because what you will come into contact with is the pain of the world. And that is big. But it's more than this, too. It's more than this. It's not just the pain. And the only way to do what I'm speaking about is through. This is what you have to go through. You will encounter this, but there's something on the other side of this as well. In the book, The Little Prince, I love that book. The Little Prince says it's only in the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. That's what I'm speaking of, but here's the challenge, and I've been saying this again all along when I come and talk to you folks. This is beyond words. And words are a fabulous thing. Language is wonderful. But sometimes things are beyond those words. We do our best to give it language. It's beyond words. It's beyond what you understand as your mind and often think as you, or is you, because it is connected to the world and to all hearts. And it's where love shines through always and in all ways. So I really believe that humanity is being called to this place at this time in our evolution. It's our next step. It's our next step. And it starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with a willingness to put one foot in front of the other and take that first small step. And then another. You know, in the Tao, we're reminded that the journey of 10,000 miles starts with one step. One step. This does not have to be done perfectly. As a matter of fact, if you do it perfectly, you will learn nothing. Ram Dass reminds us that we are all just walking each other home. So what do you say? I'll meet you there.